Things just took a major turn for the Toronto Maple Leafs as multiple new reports have dropped revealing some wild information surrounding John Tavares and his future in Toronto, as one particular report changes the landscape of the Leafs going forward. We're going to break that down and discuss what this means, as well as break down some other updates ahead of the Leafs' huge week ahead, specifically the game Wednesday against the Florida Panthers. But before we get into it, folks, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Your guys' support has been unbelievable, and thank you guys again for your continued support. There's a lot to go over today. Let's dive right into it. There's a ton of talk about John Tavares because obviously the Leafs have been playing very solid hockey as of late, even though it didn't really seem like it after the loss to the Sharks. John Tavares in particular has been having, I'm not necessarily a breakout season, but given the expectations, a fantastic year, and there's a good chance that he puts up a high goal total, 40 goals, which is crazy. But some new reports have dropped surrounding John Tavares in his future. John Tavares will not get an $11 million AAV contract again with the Leafs. That's clear, obviously. But if his next deal is in the $6 to $7 million range, it becomes more realistic. But if his next deal or a 4 or 5 year term could help spread out the cap hit, as Chris Johnson noted months ago, Tavares may be open to deferring some of the money, similar to what other NHL players have done. He wants to stay in Toronto and wants to finish his career with the Leafs, making it difficult for the team to ignore the possibilities of keeping him. So this is very interesting because obviously it's been a big conversation, and the Toronto Maple Leafs, by John Tavares putting up as good of a season as he has, I mean, it makes their decision a lot harder as it pertains to Matthew Knies, obviously going to keep Knies, but Mitch Marner, John Tavares, specifically Tavares, if he starts to creep in at 8-9 million range in unrestricted free agency from some other team that desperately needs it, things could be very interesting and take a turn very quickly for this team.
Yeah, and I think that he is going to take a hometown discount, whatever we want to call it at this point, that people keep throwing it around. I think he is going to take one. It's not going to be that much, though. I think people are still expecting John Tavares to sign for $2 or $3 million. It's not going to happen. If you look around the league, guys who returned home or, close to home, and like Claude Giroux is still making $6.5 million, even at his age, right? So I think John Tavares is going to make, around $7 million, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but it's going to be somewhere in there. And I think that's fair value. Stamkos just got 8, right? Again, if you look at Claude Giroux, he's another guy who's making 6.5 and he's a little bit older. So you have to take all these things into account. But for the Toronto Maple Leafs to move off of John Tavares because, oh, he's going to make too much. I mean, he's a great player. He might score 40 goals still this season, right? Like that's insane coming into this season. Nobody thought that was going to happen. And again, he's over a point a game player. He's been playing fantastic. So he's going to get paid. Now, obviously, like we saw last summer, Brad Living is giving longer term to get the dollar amount down, right? We've seen that. I am a little bit skeptical of that because I do, personally hope John Tavares, doesn't have to go to Robida Island or anything like that, or he doesn't drop off a cliff in the last like year or two of that contract, whatever it may look like, right? I'd want him to go out and retire probably pretty gracefully from the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? But, that doesn't always happen. We don't know exactly what Brad Living has up his sleeve in terms of term, but I think it's something they got to start looking at because they can't really, it makes sense that they have to wait for Mitch Marner to sign Marner first. They need to know how much cap they need to allot for that. But I don't like the idea of Mitch Marner holding this team hostage because they do have to get some work done. They have to make sure that Matthew Knies is re-signed, even though he is an RFA, right? It's not as pressing. But apparently, dubbed by a lot of people, and a lot of reporters, this could be a summer of offer sheaves. So you have to make sure that gets done. And then obviously, John Tavares, you have to make sure, I think he wants to stay anyway, but you have to make sure that gets done at a reasonable rate too. So it's going to be a busy summer, but I think, the whole expectation, which I think has died down a little bit about Tavares making like $2 or $3 million or something, it's not going to happen. This guy's still an elite player.
Yeah, and obviously we talk about the long-term deals that the Leafs have currently out. Chris Tanev, if you're one of a 6-year deal, he's probably not going to finish his contract, at least being a very great player. OEL, 4-year deal. So if they spread out a 4 or 5-year term, it is a little bit scary simply because the Leafs are at a point now where that 4 or 5-year deal, I think it'll still age fine, maybe not with the number that they're given, but if they're deferring money and they're spreading it out over a ton of years, they're trying to win a cup in the next 2 to 3 years. And a lot of this has to do with how well they play this year. If they make a deep run, they'll probably be more inclined to get Jonathan Tavares back. And you look at some of the projected cap hits. We have some more reports to dive into in a minute. I think the most likely outcome here is about $7 to $8 million. And 8 might be on the higher side, but I think that might be what it takes to get it done. And again, ignore the point totals there at the top. That was, of course, when this article, or I guess this report drops surrounding the cap hits and the specific amounts. But Darius, it seems that the highest probability, and this again was before he's put up 40 goals or whatever he's going to put up, so I might elevate a little bit. $7.5 to $8 million is probably it is a realistic outcome here. And you look at some of the comparables. I mean, Evgeny Malkin, all these things making $6 million, and with the cap hit going up, they're going to be forced to pay, especially because he's an unrestricted free agent, and maybe John Tavares $1 million cheaper than some of the other teams. So if he's getting offered I mean, $10 million by some random team, the Blackhawks, who want to have some veteran leadership alongside Connor Bedard or something like that, that's when it becomes very interesting. Because then if you're the Leafs, you might have to offer 8 or 9, and then the question becomes, A, is that worth it? And B, would they have the financial whereabouts to do that?
I don't know if they have to do that with this player because he has left money on the table before. Like we've seen it. It wasn't a lot, right? But he has done that. But the one thing that's standing out to me the most when we look at this card, and shout out to Scotia again for putting these cards together. They're really useful, but they're based off of a model and obviously comparables. And you can see comparables on the screen here, guys like Claude Drew. There's a couple of good players on that list. But if you look at the list, if you ask me, I'd rather John Tavares over any of them, especially the way he's playing right now at his age, right? So then when you look at the, projected cap hit and what that might be looking forward, a lot of these they usually come in, at least the ones we've looked at and have signed since we looked at them, have come in a little bit higher. With John Tavares, I think it's probably going to be either a little bit lower or right on $7 million just to keep it even, right? So I think it's going to be interesting to see where it ends up. Again, it's probably going to wait till after the season's done. I think that makes the most sense for the Leafs to reevaluate where they are. But again, I'm thinking that he is going to leave some money on the table again. Because anywhere else, like you said, like Chicago needs some help. And there's, rumors flying around there about Connor Bedard being unhappy and they need to put, some better, personnel together on the ice. And they could use a guy like this who has some leadership qualities like, Mitch Marner as well. They could use another player like that, right? So they could throw a bunch of money at a guy like this, but this is a player who's left money on the table before to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I think he wants to retire as a Toronto Maple Leaf. So I think he is going to leave some money on the table, but the question is, what does the cap hit come in at? Because he's still going to ask for a lot, right? Like he is putting together a fantastic season, and he always really has. And his face-off percentage again this year is like 57%. Like he's having another unreal season. I think it's top 4 in terms of his career in the face-off dot again. So it's not just the goals, the assists, all that. He brings so much more to the table that people don't see on every single play or every day. Let's say that he does. He has earned that money.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with his play in March. You'd see this here in 2025. He's put up 20 points in March with 13 goals, 7 assists, face-off percentage of almost 61%. I mean, you watch him play. It looks like, and he has been one of the best players on the team. And you can make an argument that he's performing better than Austin Matthews, and definitely in the month of March. And it's a little bit crazy to even have that conversation. Year 7 of his deal. You look at his last 6 games, and Leafs now are going to have a crucial stretch of play going forward. And he leaves the NHL in scoring the second game of a back-to-back. Of course, yesterday was the second game of back-to-back against the Ducks. So a bunch of different things coming out here. The team is playing fantastic. He's moving to 50th all-time in goals with 491. His season thus far has been elite, and it's going to be a big question mark going forward surrounding this team. But, I mean, there's a lot of question marks, whether that be Mitch Marner, what Matthew Nyes is going to get. It's going to be a busy offseason, and it all comes down to how they do in the playoffs starting in a couple of weeks' time or a few weeks' time. So we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news. A huge game coming on Wednesday, and it seems Anthony Stolarz is going to take the net there. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.